Hello fellow doodlers! In today's video I will be talking about my new watercolor paint box, and if you remember in my last video I talked about watercolor beading, in which I treated my old Winsor & Newton palette and my new tin palette that's in this box. And so today I'm going to be testing out the paints and making a picture. Let's go! Okay, so I don't know what you think when you think watercolors. I personally like to draw mermaids with them, so that's what I'm drawing today. And the mermaid I'm drawing is actually one of my original characters from a story that I have yet to write down, but I really liked the description of her when I found an old story I wrote about her, so I thought, why not draw her? One thing I really wanted was to emphasize that she's not really human, I guess. So I put her with her hair swirling around her in a ghostly sort of fashion and made her face very long and her neck very thin. I went back over it with my classic 2B pencil and just sort of defined the details. Alright, now for the paint. You can see me using a few different tools here for the paint, and I use a syringe to put the water onto the palette, and then a misting bottle of spray, just plain water, to mist my paints. Whenever you're starting off watercolors, I believe that watercolors is all about layers, and you can get darker but you can't get lighter. So start as light as you can, or as light as you are safe with starting, before you add on more layers. The more layers you add on, the darker it'll get, so don't worry about it being too light. For her face, I actually didn't add a base layer skin tone. I just added some blush and some shadows, and that was really it. I used a red color for her blush and a really dark purple that I just mixed blue and reds together to make for her shadows. One thing I noticed while painting with these was the paint itself. So when I put the water in it and I was mixing it, it was fine. It mixed well, but that's not the complaint I have about it. It's the way that the paint, or at least the paint that's still in the palette and the trays itself, didn't dry right. In my Winsor & Newton, it dries smooth and untextured, except for, I guess, the few textures that you put in with your brush. But with this paint, it dried textured, bumpy, and I wasn't sure if that was the effect it was supposed to have. While I definitely enjoyed all these colors, I still ended up using very few, actually just using 1 or 2 reds, 2 purples, and a few bit of blue here and there. This just proves that you can get by with a small watercolor palette and just mix them as you go. Me personally, I like just opening up a palette and seeing all the pretty colors. The mermaid's hair was actually originally supposed to be a really, really dark purple. But I found that the lighter color looked really nice on her, so I decided to keep that bit. One tip that I have for you when doing watercolors, which is actually a tip that I forgot several times while painting, was make sure the area you're painting is totally dry, or at least the areas around it are dry that you don't want the paint to go into. For instance, let's say I am painting right next to a spot that I just painted, and well, since that spot is still wet, the paints will bleed into each other and I will get color mixing that I didn't want. And while I did end up doing this a few times during my painting, I was still able to fix it and make it look nice. But just something to keep in mind while you're painting is that you should wait until each layer is dry before putting on another layer. I would like to point out here that if you notice that the paint on my palette that I've mixed and put water in is pulled and it's not beading, this is about a week after the fact that I treated it, so as you can see it's still holding up very well. Here you can see me cleaning up when I made that mistake that I mentioned earlier about the not waiting for it to be dry, and the colors bled into each other and made a darker color than I wanted. Another thing I want to say about this palette is that the colors aren't named. So I went through and named them all based on some pencils and some other paints that I had in my collection, and just figured out what looked best. Some of them I wish I'd named differently, but it was very easy to come up with the names. Some of them I made up myself, especially for the metallic ones, naming them after gems. Sorry, camera cut out here. Died. I had to go get another one, which didn't like to stay put, so you'll see the camera sliding down a little bit, and sorry about that. Here I'm just adding final details, putting in the eye color, darkening up the lips, and putting in line art, which I just use the watercolors in a dark form of fashion in a darker paint color than the rest and put that in. I'm not very creative when it comes to backgrounds, so for this background I just put in some blue just to, I guess, point out that she was in the ocean. When I'm done with the paint, I will just basically attack it with my colored pencils. I'm using the Arteza 48 pack, and I've really found that they work very nicely for this, as they don't really bleed into the watercolors as some others have. I used to use watercolor pencils for final details, but I didn't like that they bled into each other. And this wouldn't be a review without messing around with metallics. Surprise, surprise, I used metallics. So I put some pink in her eyes, and then I used the reddish bronze color in her cheeks to give them some magical sparkle. And this is my finished piece. Really, I liked the process. My only problem with it was how the paint that was still in the half pans dried. I just really didn't like the texture. But I liked the mixing process, and I liked how well they pulled now that I'd treated it, and I liked the way that the metallics went on. You really just have to load up your brush with the metallics or you can't really see the sparkle, especially since I put it basically on white, and use the same colors for the cheeks and stuff. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next week, and come back for more. If you liked this review or want me to do more about watercolors, then please comment down below so I know what you want me to do. Bye!